Chapter 21, Shiela's Fury. Shiela grumbled as she got out of bed. She walked to the kitchen, which had always been the usual scene of David's early morning activity. But today it was just a room filled with dirty dishes and the cold omen of another irritable day. Without David around to cook her meals, wash her clothes, or clean the house, she was left to fend for herself. She was neither accustomed to nor pleased about this forced self-reliance. As she tried to cook breakfast for herself, the results were pitiful. The eggs were either undercooked or burnt, and the toast was as hard as a rock, the same as yesterday and the day before. The more she tried, the more frustrated she became. Her anger simmered, threatening to boil over like the inedible stew she had attempted last night. David's absence was a thorn in her side. It disrupted the comfortable routine she had grown to expect. The lack of David's wages, which she had used to supplement her shopping sprees, added to her annoyance. The house felt emptier without his presence, and the silence grew louder with each passing hour. As she paced around the house, Shiela found herself wondering what David was up to. Was he regretting his decision to leave yet? Was he lost in the big city without her to guide him? Was he struggling to find a roof over his head, food to eat, or a job to earn his keep? In her mind, David was a failure, incapable of surviving on his own. He had always been docile, bending to her will without much resistance. He was surely lost without her guidance, struggling to navigate the real world's complicated maze. "He'll be back," she muttered to herself. Her anger fueled her denial, solidifying her conviction that David would come back and serve her once again. He won't last much longer. He'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. And when that day comes, she'll be waiting. She was ready to remind him of his place and exact her control once again. Because in her world, she was the ruler, and David was just a pawn. And pawns, she believed, always ended up where they belonged, under her control. Just then, Melanie arrived home from a tiring shift at the convenience store, not expecting the coming onslaught. As soon as she stepped through the front door, Shiela emerged from the living room, her face twisted in annoyance. "Where is that ungrateful boy?" Shiela demanded. "He's left me to fend for myself. He's not even here to cook or clean or hand over his wages." Melanie rolled her eyes, annoyed by Sheila's outburst. She had hoped for a peaceful evening to relax after a long day at work, but it seemed that was not meant to be. "David's not here, Mom," she said wearily. "He left. He's not coming back." Sheila's face contorted further. "He's a failure, that's what he is. He won't last a week out there. I bet he's already regretting his decision." Melanie sighed, setting her bag down on the floor. "That's not fair, Mom," she countered, her patience wearing thin. "David's just trying to make a better life for himself. He deserves a chance." Shiela scoffed, crossing her arms. "He doesn't deserve anything," she hissed. "If it weren't for me, he'd have grown up poor on the streets." Shiela stormed off to her room with an irritated huff, returning moments later with the home phone in her hand. She dialed David's number, her fingers jabbing the keys with an angry force. But instead of David, she only heard a robotic female voice. "The number you have dialed is not in service." The line went dead, leaving Shiela staring at the phone in disbelief. Sheila's face turned a deep shade of crimson, her grip tightening around the phone. She let out a chilling screech, startling Melanie. "What's the point of giving him that damned phone if he's going to go and disconnect it?" she seethed. "And to think I was so gracious, so generous, that out of the kindness of my heart I provided him with a phone. He should be thankful. That phone was for him to be at my beck and call, not to throw my generosity back in my face." Her anger was a raging fire. Shiela stormed off, leaving Melanie standing alone in the hallway. She slammed her bedroom door, causing all the windows to rattle. Inside her room, she continued her tantrum. Melanie could hear her throw things across the room, kick at her bed, and scream violently. Thankfully for her, the room bore the brunt of Shiela's wrath, a powerless victim of her uncontrolled fury. Melanie was no stranger to her mother's tantrums. The shouting, the harsh words, the violent outbursts. It was a familiar scene, one that had played out countless times before. The only difference was that this time, David wasn't here to bear the brunt of Shiela's wrath. As she listened to the chaos unfolding in her mother's room, Melanie couldn't help but feel a tinge of relief for David. He was finally free from this toxic environment, free from Sheila's constant belittlement and unreasonable demands. For the first time in his life, David had the freedom to make his own choices and to live his life on his own terms, and Melanie was genuinely happy for him. However, her feelings of happiness quickly turned to worry. She couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that something was wrong. The fact that David's phone line was disconnected was a cause for concern. This had never happened before. It was unlike David to completely cut off contact without any warning. David was always considerate, always ensuring he didn't worry others unnecessarily. He wouldn't just sever contact without letting anyone know, especially not when he knew how much Melanie cared for his well-being. With a heavy heart, Melanie retreated to her room. She sat on her bed, her mind filled with worry for David. Where was he now? Was he safe? Did he manage to find his footing in the massive city? Kim told her that he'd stopped by the convenience store looking for her the other day. Surely he'll come back again. Melanie decided to give it a few more days. Perhaps David was simply taking some time to adjust to his new life. Maybe he had disconnected the phone to distance himself from Shiela. She hoped that was the case. But if she didn't hear from him soon, she decided she would have to take matters into her own hands and try to find him herself.